Delighted to welcome Michael Eaves into the Fairways of Life show. You know him as a host at ESPN SportsCenter and more. He is a four-time Emmy Award winner. He joined ESPN back in 2015. He's a University of Kentucky alum. Maybe they're going to get Billy Donovan down there from what I'm hearing. We welcome Michael in right now. Michael, to that point, here we have South Carolina winning the national championship. We have UConn back-to-back. We have hockey playoffs in less than a week and a half. Baseball is back underway. There is so much. Premiership is going to wrap up in 5-6 weeks, and that will be over, and more and more and more. There's so much going on in the world of sport right now that here we have the Masters, which is kind of the gateway, the right to spring. On top of that, can an argument be made that this time of year is the best time of year if you're a fan truly of sport across the board?
The spring definitely is. I do believe May is the best overall because you have playoffs in both the NBA, NHL. You also have the Kentucky Derby. You also have the Indianapolis 500. So all those things happen in May, plus baseball still in action, plus the PGA Championship now. I think May is the best month of the 12, but I believe this is the best week because I think Masters Week is the best week in sports because it's so much more than just about the 4 rounds of golf, as we know, especially if you're a golf fan at all, Matt. If you just play golf, Matt, like you're all about the par 3. You're about seeing what's up with the Champions Dinner. Like that little intrigue adds to it as well. The Masters Week, for me personally, is by far the best week of the year.
When you think about whether we're talking about the Masters, whether we're talking about golf at large, or whether we're talking about sport at large, currently, I think it's fair to say that we live in a society that you either have to choose one side or another, regardless of the issue. You have to choose one side or the other side. If you've chosen that side, the other side says you're wrong. In other words, there seems to be at times a lack of listening, a lack of understanding, a lack of learning from each other. Is sport a reflection of that at times, Michael, or is sport a place that's a refuge from it? Is that part of why this week is so special?
All right, this is going to be me doing the complete opposite of what you just said. I think it's both. It's really easy to get divided when it comes to sports because it's emotional. And if you are for one side, your emotion immediately tells you that you have to be against the other side. If you're a Yankees fan, you can't be a Red Sox fan. If you're a Kentucky fan, you can't be right. USC, UCLA. We have these natural divisions and rivalries as it relates to sports. But I've always said, Matt, as it relates to American society specifically, sports is the most unifying aspect of our culture, right? Because you can have an old Jewish woman, a young Latino man who both root for the Knicks. You can have people that would never cross paths otherwise, and if they're going to a Chiefs game. Like there's no other thing in sports because churches are divided on Sundays, right? Neighborhoods are divided as well based on socioeconomic standing. But sports is a one thing that unifies the largest cross section of people in our society for sure. And that to me has also been one of the most beautiful aspects of sports because it brings so many different people together. And each little sport can be a microcosm of that. I mean, I played golf my entire life, and I've definitely played golf with people I never would have otherwise if we hadn't just got paired together, at some daily fee course somewhere. But that is also sort of the beauty of coming to the Masters as well because people love this place, and you may never see those two people in the same room ever again.
Yeah, everything you just said reminds me of, I'm sure you remember the great author, he's still alive, but Michael Murphy, who wrote the book Golf in the Kingdom back in 1971. And he told me one time that sports is Western yoga, which I thought was an interesting way to phrase it because he was very much into the culture of India and that mindset. So this week, where did you grow up, by the way? What part of the country did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in Kentucky, about 800 people, a place called White Plains.
Okay. So where you were, because I was obviously from the north. So for me, the Masters, it started the spring. It's like the official,
100%.
It didn't matter what weather was going on. It meant that winter was officially behind us. It's same for you guys?
Absolutely, and also I grew up in the Central Time Zone, right? So the Masters would go off around 5 o'clock Central Time, and this is after the clocks change, right? So you have all this other daylight after the Masters would conclude each day, and then I would still have time to go out my backyard and practice some of the golf. that I just witnessed on television. So for me, it's the kickoff, it's the official kickoff for spring for sure, but also the golf season in my mind. Even now, I've lived different parts of the country, and even Los Angeles, and now in the Northeast. But it doesn't feel like golf season to me until the week after the Masters.
Did you allow yourself as a kid? Are you the type person that allowed yourself to dream and dream big? Did you allow yourself to dream that one day you'd be one of the faces on ESPN, that one day you'd be one of the faces bringing us our news and our interviews and talking to the players as they come off the course when you think about the magnitude of that at the Masters?
I did. Not in my early teens, because at that point in my mind, I still want to be like a professional athlete. But once I got, towards the latter years of high school and really kind of started to decide what I wanted my career choice to be, when I realized I was not going to be a professional athlete, then yes, because I always watched the biggest events, as everyone does. But I watch sports pretty much all day, every day when I wasn't in school. But it's the big events that you remember. It's the football games on Thanksgiving Day. It's the NBA games on Christmas Day. It's the national championship game the week of the Masters, right? You remember all those things. And like, yeah, I want to do that because I want to be at those events. So absolutely. And I've been very fortunate that I've done just about every event that I watched as a kid and wanted to do and covered it in some capacity. So I've been very fortunate and very blessed in that regard, that those dreams that I allowed myself to have, most of them have come true in some regard.
I didn't expect us to go down this road, Michael, but I'm glad that we have, because I think I have a personal belief that when you do a broadcast on ESPN or you're broadcasting the Masters or in a tiny way with what we're doing, that somewhere, somehow, someone that needs to hear a message hears it, that there's purpose in hopefully in what we all engage in. And I believe that as we were talking about society, and there's that kind of crab in a bucket mentality, as one tries to climb out, the rest pull them back down again, that our society really doesn't promote particularly young people to say that you could do whatever you want, that you could accomplish whatever you want. So I'm curious, given what you have accomplished on a massive scale, in fairness, what message do you have, particularly to those young people, someone that is you 30 years ago, sitting down going, gee, what do I want to do with my life, when society and maybe even people closest to them are saying, who do you think you are? You can't do that. What do you say to those people to think big?
Have the audacity to be greater than your dreams. I mean, because how can you achieve greatness if you don't have that thinking? And for young people, they see constant reminders of it all the time. If they look at the heroes that they watch every day, whether it's in sports, whether it's in music, whether it's whatever. I mean, if you're a Taylor Swift fan, look how great Taylor Swift is. And she's a young girl from Pennsylvania who played a guitar, right? Ended up going to Nashville, and then all of a sudden, because she believed in herself and kept doing what she wanted to do, what she loved to do, she became one of the biggest pop stars in history. She's a billionaire, right? And she was just a young girl from Pennsylvania, or Beyonce, or anyone else. People that go out and achieve great things like a Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, Mark Cuban, like the pioneers of business in the last 20, 30 years in America. They were just young people who liked to play with computers and had ideas, but then worked at it passionately because they believed they could be successful. And then we can name every, modern day great athlete as another example. But you have to believe that you are capable, because, when I was watching people as broadcasters, right, especially people who do what I do, non-athletes, right, who came to this and sit in a host chair, like they were just regular dudes, right, who end up having these phenomenal jobs. All right, so I'm a regular dude. Why can't I have a phenomenal job? But you have to believe it. What's that old adage? In order to achieve, you have to believe. It sounds kind of corny sometimes, but it's absolutely true. How can you achieve something that you don't believe in yourself? Otherwise, people just have to hand you things. When people hand you things, you still don't have that same motivation to do something with that opportunity. But if it's something you want to do and you believe wholeheartedly, all your emotions into it, you're going to make sacrifices for it. And sometimes you're making those sacrifices without second guessing them. Like my first TV job, I was still in college, but I had to be at the news station every morning at 5 a.m., 5 days a week. This is my senior year of college. When I first got that job, man, I was getting home sometimes at 5 a.m., not going to work at 5 a.m., right? But I stopped hanging out with my friends during the week immediately because that was an opportunity for me to potentially get a job as soon as I graduated. I stopped playing video games at night because of that, because I had to go to bed early. I haven't played video games since college, literally because of my career. So those are the things that you do just because it's what you want to do. And it's not about, people handing you stuff and telling you exactly how to be successful. You've got to kind of figure it out on your own. But if you have that desire, it's much easier to do so.
And the funny thing is people don't realize that when you hear a story like that from Michael Eaves, everybody thinks that, you go into broadcasting, the streets are paved with gold. Michael, that first gig, 5 a.m. in the morning, college senior, what
Yeah.
did you get paid for that?
I got paid minimum wage because it was an hourly job, and I was only there for 4 hours each morning. But I'll tell you this: so when I graduated that following May, I got a full-time news producing job. I wanted to be obviously a sportscaster, but I got a job producing news, weekends, filling spots. I was making $15,000 a year in May of 1994. That was my first full-time job in television.
Try to pay for your apartment and your food. It's unbelievable.
I,
Uh, I want to
yeah.
ask you another question about all this, because there is real significance to what you are doing, to the path that you have. Bringing this up, yes, because you and I have talked about it before as a friend, and I think it means something. I remember interviewing Charlie Sifford. Everyone asks me all the time, Dom, what do we have? Like 10,000 interviews in our archive, something like that. And they said, what's your favorite interview? And I go to two. Arnold Palmer just before he passed away, when he was reflecting on his life, and Charlie Sifford in the same situation. And the distinctiveness between those two interviews is that Mr. Sifford still had a deep hurt in his heart. And much of it came from the place that we're at this week, Augusta, Georgia, that he couldn't, despite having the talents and having done the things that others had done to gain him entry into the Masters, he was not allowed to go because of the color of his skin. And it deeply, deeply hurt him to his last dying days. How significant is the advancements that we're making right now, particularly when we look through the lens of Augusta National?
Look, I think under the guidance of Chairman Ridley, this has clearly been the most progressive era of Augusta National Golf Club and thus the Masters, without question, whether it's with minority participation or women. It's unequivocal. This is the greatest progression of this club under Chairman Ridley by far. And I think that is a result of so much work that has been done since the days of Charlie Sifford, and in the last decade for sure, in terms of how society is changing and try to right some of the wrongs. We can't go back in time and change those things, but we can help correct some of the things that those times created. And that is what is happening with inclusion. Look, I understand right now a lot of people, they try to use DEI as a bad term, and it's a political tool right now because of the election going on. I get that. But the idea of it, it matters. And it's always mattered. It's just never had a title the way it has now, and then people can turn it into something else. But just that idea of creating a better society is being reflected right now at Augusta National. It just is. Like, this is my 8th consecutive year coming here, Matt, and it feels different now than it did my first year. And it didn't feel terrible my first year by any regards, because it was better than it was, 15 years before that, 20 years before that. But it definitely feels better now when I see more and more women on the golf course. I see more women wearing green jackets. I see more faces of color wearing the green jackets. And then when you have that representation, then you start to look at the patrons walking the grounds. Like, wow, I've never seen this many black women at the Masters in 8 years I've been coming here. I said this to my wife just last night. I said,
Yeah.
I saw more black women on the golf course today than I've ever seen here before. And then you look at the participation of the drive, chip, and putt. Look at the faces of those kids, right? And the people who are winning those events. Oh, by the way, Akshay Bhatia, who was here 10 years ago, Indian American, now he's playing in the event. That is all good. Like, how are those stories not great in the eyes of anyone watching, right? And again, but to your point, I think it's a reflection of what we're seeing in terms of society changing, Augusta National.
When you look at the 2024 Masters, here we are Tuesday of Masters Week. I'm curious if you thought the headlines have changed, but what would you say are the primary headlines heading in at this point?
Is this tournament Scottie Scheffler's to lose? Is Brooks Koepka still mad about losing on Sunday to John Rahm last year, and how much can Tiger Woods play? Now you can put those in any order you want, I think, but I think those to me are the three biggest storylines. Um, just because Scotty's played so well as of late, and again, he reminds us of some of the times Tiger came in here, and we were wondering not if Tiger was going to win, but by how many strokes. And a couple of times he did not win, especially when he was one of the biggest betting favorites, which Scotty Scheffler is now. And Brooks Koepka, I thought he won the PGA last year, Matt, because he was so mad about losing the Masters, and he played so well. And he really hasn't done much, since then. But it's a major for him. He always amps up his game, and I think coming here reminded him of the hurt that he felt last year, and it may motivate him to play well this week. And Tiger Woods, look, the last 2 times we saw Tiger have not been good, right? Let's go back a year ago. I think he played 7 holes on that cold and wet Saturday morning, and then had to withdraw after making the cut to tie the all-time record for most cuts made in a row. And then we just saw him at Riviera and had to leave the courts after 6 holes, I believe, in the second round after feeling ill. So we haven't seen him much, and he hasn't finished any golf for us in a while as fans. So that's very intriguing, obviously.
If I gave you Scheffler, Rahm against the field, who would you take?
Whew. Well, Rahm has the lowest average score to par here of anyone who's played 200 something rounds, 300 rounds, something, whatever that number is. And Scotty Scheffler is by far the best player in the world this year. I might take those 2. And if you put Brooks Koepka in, and if I got 3 against the field, I would definitely take those 3.
That would you'd
but
get
granted,
3.
The thing about right, thank you, but here's the thing though, at the Masters, as we've seen, there've been Danny Willits win, there've been Mike Weirs win, there've been some guys come out of nowhere. Even when Sergio won, he wasn't playing great back then. So it's possible, but those 3 right now against the field, I'm taking those 3.
This week, could you kind of give us I'm going to ask you 2 things. The latter one, I'm not sure if you're going to have all the air times, but could you tell us about your role this week, where and how and when we can see you, and how that ties into the ESPN coverage?
Absolutely. Well, of course, there are daily SportsCenter hits, and most of my hits end up at night because that's a SportsCenter I host at night, obviously, 11 o'clock Eastern primarily. So me and Andy North kind of wrapping up the day with our hits from here at SportsCenter. A couple of the air throughout the night. We got the preview shows on ESPN Plus, 2-hour preview shows today and tomorrow, kind of setting up the coverage, obviously. And then Thursday and Friday, I'm on the telecast with Scott Van Pelt, Curtis Range, and the rest of CBS crew, and I'll be conducting the player interviews once they conclude their. It's a cool thing because I always want to know what the players are thinking about their round as soon as they step off the golf course, and I get to do that. Like the interviews that you see on ESPN on Thursday and Friday, the ones that I do, that's the first time the players have talked to anybody in the media about their round, and that's for me that role matters on our telecast, especially if something happens, or if someone shoots a great score, or if someone doesn't play as well as we thought they would. But yeah, that's where you'll see me primarily Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I've told you this before, Michael. Like your ability at that point to draw out answers from them of meaning is remarkable. It's not superficial. It's not just make sure that they're happy and they go about their way. It is so hard to do what you have to do in that moment. I mean, you tell me. I would guess that your average interview is maybe 1:30, somewhere in that time frame, and within that time frame, immediately off the emotions of the course, either in elation or anger, you have to draw out something of substance, and you nail it every time. It's very impressive.
I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, that's about right. 1.5 minutes, 1:45. You get 3 questions typically. And, within the first 5 seconds of the person walking in the room, you get a pretty good sense of what kind of mood they're in, good, bad, or indifferent. But from that point, and that is my goal, Matt. I want to get something out of them that maybe the average person would not, but also something that the viewer at home would want to ask them if they had that same opportunity that I had.
How much is the weather a storyline at this point? Is everybody about what's going to happen Thursday morning?
Yeah, I think it just kind of matters how much rain comes, but also, Matt, when it comes, right? I've seen different forecasts, and they say a lot of it may come overnight before play is actually supposed to start, and then how much comes down, how much can the course drain. If it's going to be wet when they start, then these guys are going to be firing darts. Because if you give them a wet green surface at any place, but even here, even as diabolical as greens can be, it's easier to fire at the pins and it slows down the greens a little bit. Even if they suck out the air with the sub-air systems, it still makes it easier to play those greens. Because these greens are their worst in a good way when they're hard and fast, right? So it's just a matter of how much rain. I think by the time we get to the weekend, it won't even be a concern. But the biggest thing is the wind. I mean, if it blows, whether it rains or not, if it blows and you're gusting 25 or 30 miles an hour, good luck, guys. Because this is a second shot golf course. It's about hitting the green and hitting the right place. But if the wind is swirling, as it always does at Augusta National, trying to judge that wind and trying to hit a certain spot on the green just makes it that much more difficult, even for the best players in the world. And that's the real key. How hard will the wind blow and for how long?
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays itself out because the forecasts right now are exactly where you just said, 25 to 30 miles per hour gusts, sustained winds upwards to 25 miles per hour throughout Thursday and Friday. Thursday, of course, augmented by how much rain they get, when they get it, will it be joined by lightning as well? Okay, so Michael, I'm gonna throw you to wrap up here. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I don't care if you just tell me, yeah, they're pretty, but I just want to go through some holes that we thought were of distinction, a couple of which are obvious to ask you about, and a couple of which maybe not so obvious for people that are watching us around the world. I want to start with the fourth hole and just get your reaction to what we're seeing from this par 3, 240 yards. Last year actually played more difficult than the par 3 12.
Yeah, it's standing on that tee box, whether you've played the golf course or not, it just looks so far away for a par three, right? And then you get to the green complex, man. And again, it also depends on where that green is. Anything behind that bunker on the right side, you're like, how can I possibly hit a ball this far into an area that small and keep it on the green? And oftentimes you cannot. That's why most players play away from it and just kind of putt to the green, hope you get three and walk out of there. It is one of the more difficult looking par threes because of the distance and the green that we probably see on the PGA Tour.
All right, what about the very next hole? This is probably this fifth hole is probably the hole to me, Michael, that I think is the most underrated in terms of its significance.
Yes, it's definitely to me. It's the first really hard hole you face on the opening nine. Like the par three fourth is hard, but the fifth one, the way that they've lengthened it now, so hitting the fairway on the right side of the fairway is more challenging than it ever was. And then when you get to that green, Matt, even looking at it from the fairway, because it has so many undulations and you see these little mounds, you're like, how on the green no matter where I hit it? And if the pin's over here, there's no way I can keep the ball on the green, right? But obviously the best players in the world have been able to do it. But also we see that green make the best players in the world look like hacks sometimes because of the undulation and trying to hit it in the right spot. It is to me maybe the hole on the beginning nine of this golf course where you squeeze your club the most, hoping you can just hang on.
And it was the most difficult hole at last year's Masters, the par 4 fifth at 495 yards. The next two, just to have some fun with, I know you're going to enjoy talking about these two. The par 3 12th, let's start with that.
The thing about the par 3 12 is it's not that long of a hole, right? Relatively speaking, especially for best players in the world. But even if you're a low single digit like I am, it's not that long of a hole. And the flag placement means everything. But that Sunday pin, it looks like it's not even a green. Like if you're standing on that tee box and looking where it is, like you see the flag there, but you don't really see much of the green surface, right? So that's it's kind of a mind trick within itself. But sort of like the fourth, like you just have to be smart when you play that hole based on the pin placement. Like you go back to 2019, the year that Tiger won. We had three dudes hit it in the water with Koepka, Molinari, and Finau. And Tiger, he hit it, 25, 30 feet left and 200 for par and got out of there, right? Sometimes you just have to be smart. Where these guys are so trained to be aggressive now, be conservative and smart, and you can get out of there with a good score.
All right, how about the 15th?
I love the 15th because after you hit your tee shot, and look, it's not hard to hit fairways at Augusta National. Let's be fair. And you're just sitting there, and the hole just sitting right in front of you, like it's just as square as it wants to be. Sure, you see the water, the green's pretty wide, is right there in front of you, and you're like, if I still don't hit it right, there's a chance I can make 6 or 7 here. when I should easily make four with a good drive in the middle of that fairway, even the right or left side. That to me is sort of the intrigue. Is literally it's the one hole I think on the golf course that is right in front of you, and what are you going to do with it? And we've seen tremendous scores, whether it's Jack Nicklaus in '86 with the eagle he made, and then Seve that same year putting it in the water. Right? We've seen so many good things and bad things happen to that hole that just adds to the lure of this place.
Challenge, opportunity, courage, risk, success, all tied into
All
one.
that.
That is Augusta National. And Michael Eaves is one of the best in the business. Cannot wait for your work coming up through the rest of this week, from those updates on SportsCenter to the live coverage. Michael, so appreciative of all the time that you always give us. But thank you once again, if as ever, for today.
No problem, Matt. Good seeing you, man. Have a good week.